My name is Ingrid, and I'm 26 years old. For years, my parents quietly told every employer in our town that I couldn't be trusted. For 2 full years, I couldn't get hired anywhere near home. Not because I wasn't qualified. I had graduated with a 3.9 GPA in accounting. My professors had written glowing recommendations. On paper, I had done everything right. But none of it mattered, because behind my back, my parents had already decided what story the town would hear about me. My father once looked at me and said, "Maybe now you'll learn to respect us." He thought he had finally pushed me far enough. He thought 2 years of rejection, 2 years of cleaning hotel bathrooms while he mocked me from a distance, would make me come back and beg for his approval. But there was one thing he didn't know. He didn't know about the envelope. He didn't know what my grandmother had done 15 years earlier. And he definitely didn't know why the CEO of Mercer Holdings was waiting for me. Before I continue, if this story feels worth hearing, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely connect with what I'm sharing. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I'd love to know. Now, let me take you back 2 years, to the day I discovered what my own parents had done to my future. From the outside, the Thornton family looked flawless. My father, Gerald Thornton, owned the biggest construction company in our county. Our 2-story colonial home sat on 3 acres of land, with a garage that held his Mercedes, my mother's Lexus, and my brother Marcus's BMW, a graduation gift for finishing business school. My mother, Diane, played the role of the perfect devoted wife, Wedgwood china for Sunday dinners, fresh flowers from the farmer's market every week, a warm smile that never slipped in public. And then there was Marcus, 4 years older than me, the golden child, the heir apparent. He had been raised to take over Dad's company from the time he was old enough to hold a hammer. Every door opened for him. Every mistake was called experience. Every idea he had was treated like potential. But with me, everything was different. Anything I wanted had to be justified. Anything I achieved was questioned. And anything I needed was treated like an inconvenience. I learned early that daughters had a different place in the Thornton household. When Marcus wanted to study abroad in London, Dad wrote the check without hesitation. 2 years later, when I asked about the same program, he laughed. "For what?" he said. "You'll get married eventually. Save me the money." So I went to a state university 40 minutes away. I lived at home and commuted. At family dinners, the conversation always revolved around Marcus, his projects, his promotions, his future. I sat at the end of the table, passing dishes and clearing plates while Dad carved the roast and delivered life lessons to his son. "A man builds his legacy through his work," Dad would say, pointing his fork at Marcus. "Remember that?" He never pointed that fork at me. When I was 16, I heard him tell my mother something I've never forgotten. They were in the kitchen, speaking quietly, and I had stopped just outside the door. "Daughters don't need to achieve," he said. "They need to learn how to keep a home. Ingrid will marry well. That's her job." I stood frozen in the hallway. That was the first time I truly understood how my father saw me, not as a person with goals, not as someone with a future of her own, just as someone to be managed until I became useful to someone else. The summer before college, my parents gave me a credit card. "For necessities," Mom said, sliding the slim piece of plastic across the kitchen table. "Books, supplies, whatever you need for school." Dad nodded from behind his newspaper. "Don't go crazy, but you're covered." I was 18, and I wanted so badly to prove I could be responsible, so I used the card exactly the way they told me to. Textbooks for my accounting classes, a second-hand laptop from the campus tech sale, notebooks, calculators, basic school supplies, nothing careless, nothing unnecessary. Over 3 months, the total came to $100 to $200. When the statement arrived, Dad lost his temper. I still remember standing in the dining room under that chandelier, watching Mom's face go pale as he slammed the paper onto the table. $1,200? He said, already on his feet. The veins in his neck were visible. "Who gave you permission to spend this much?" "You did," I said, though my voice came out smaller than I wanted. "You said it was for school supplies." "I said necessities, not a shopping spree." "Gerald," Mom said softly, "the books were expensive this semester." "Stay out of this, Diane." Then he turned back to me, his eyes cold. You'll pay back every cent, every single cent, or you can find somewhere else to live." So I did. For 8 months, I worked 2 part-time jobs, one at the campus library and weekend shifts at a coffee shop. I paid back every dollar. I kept every receipt. I documented every payment. But the money wasn't the only cost. Working 25 hours a week meant I couldn't take a full course load. My degree took 6 years instead of 4. 2 extra years of tuition that Dad refused to help with. 2 extra years of commuting from home. 2 extra years of being reminded that I was a burden. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought once the money was repaid, he would let it go. But my father had a long memory, and he knew exactly how to use it against me. That night, Mom found me crying in my room. She sat on the edge of my bed, brushed my hair back gently, and said, "Your father is just trying to teach you the value of money. He loves you," she said softly. "Don't be angry." And I wanted to believe her. That was my mistake. The only person who ever made me feel like I truly mattered was my grandmother. Margaret Hayes was not a soft woman. She had built a chain of furniture stores from absolutely nothing. She started with one small showroom in 1972, grew it into 11 locations across the state, and then sold the entire business when she turned 65. After that, she retired with enough money to never depend on anyone again. She was sharp, practical, and almost impossible to fool. She noticed things most people ignored, including what was really happening inside her daughter's marriage. When I was little, I spent my summers at Grandma Margaret's house. Her home always smelled like lavender and old books. She taught me how to read financial statements before I was 12. She showed me how compound interest worked using her own investment accounts. "Knowledge is freedom, Ingrid," she would say, tapping the side of her head. "No one can take away what you keep in here." At family gatherings, she watched my father closely. I noticed the way her eyes narrowed whenever he dismissed something I said. I noticed how her jaw tightened when Marcus was praised for every little thing, while I was barely acknowledged. One afternoon, when I was 15, we were sitting together on her porch, watching the sun settle over her garden. Out of nowhere, she reached for my hand. "Ingrid," she said quietly, "I want you to remember something." I looked at her. Her expression was serious in a way I had never seen before. "I have already prepared for your future. When the time comes, you'll know." I frowned. "Prepared what, Grandma?" She smiled, but there was something sad behind it. "Your father can't control everything. Neither can your mother. One day, you'll need help they won't give you. And when that day comes, you'll be ready." I didn't understand what she meant. I was 15. I thought she was just being dramatic. 3 years ago, Grandma Margaret passed away. She was 78. At the time, I had no idea she had left me something far more valuable than money. She had left me a way out. I graduated summa cum laude with a degree in accounting, a 3.9 GPA. Dean's List every semester. One of my professors, who had once worked at Deloitte, wrote me a glowing recommendation letter. For the first time in my life, I had something that truly belonged to me. Credentials, proof, a future no one in my family could take credit for. The graduation ceremony was on a Saturday in May. I walked across the stage in my cap and gown, diploma in hand, and searched the crowd for my family. They were there, but they weren't watching me. Dad and Mom were sitting on either side of Marcus in the 3rd row. He had driven down, supposedly to support me, but the 3 of them were leaning close together, laughing about something I couldn't hear. When my name was called, the only person I felt was watching me was the one who wasn't there. Grandma. Her seat was empty, but in my heart, she was the only one who understood what that moment meant. After the ceremony, Dad found me outside the auditorium. "Nice job," he said, in the same flat tone he used when talking to delivery drivers. "Listen, I've got a proposition for you." I looked at him, surprised. "Come work at the company," he continued. "We need someone to handle the books." For one brief second, my heart lifted. Maybe he finally saw my value. Maybe he finally understood that I had earned my place. Then he kept talking. "The position would be unpaid for the first year. Consider it an apprenticeship. You'll live at home, help your mother, and learn the business. In a few years, when Marcus takes over, you'll be useful." Useful. That word landed harder than I expected. Unpaid. Living at home, helping my mother, working under my brother. I took a slow breath and made myself stay calm. "I appreciate the offer, Dad." I said carefully. I'd like to try finding work on my own first, get some outside experience. His face barely moved, but something in his eyes changed. Fine, he said quietly. Try it your way. Then he turned and walked back to the car, where Mom and Marcus were already waiting. None of them looked back. I stood alone in the parking lot, still holding my diploma, and told myself I had made the right decision. I had no idea that my father's silence wasn't acceptance. It was the beginning of his private campaign to make sure I failed. The rejection emails started arriving within weeks. First came Miller and Associates, the accounting firm downtown. The interview had gone beautifully. The hiring manager smiled, shook my hand, and told me they would be in touch soon. 2 days later, I received the same polished message every applicant dreads. They had decided to move forward with another candidate. I applied to the regional bank next. Same thing. A strong interview, a warm conversation, then silence, then another form email. After that came the insurance company, the property management firm, the medical billing office, the credit union. 15 applications, 15 interviews, 15 rejections. At first, I blamed myself. Maybe my resume wasn't strong enough. Maybe I had said something wrong. Maybe I wasn't as capable as I thought I was. So I worked harder. I spent nights rewriting cover letters, practicing interview answers in the mirror, and reading career advice articles until my eyes burned. But nothing changed. No matter how prepared I was, every opportunity ended the same way. Then, one afternoon, I walked into Patterson Financial Services for what felt like my 20th interview. The HR manager was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a calm voice. She listened carefully as I answered her questions. She nodded. She smiled. For the first time in weeks, I felt like maybe this one would be different. Then she paused. She looked at me for a long moment, and something in her expression shifted. "Miss Thornton," she said slowly, "I'm going to tell you something I probably shouldn't." My stomach tightened. "You seem like a lovely young woman," she continued. "Qualified, professional, well-spoken." She hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. "But I think you should talk to your father." I stared at her. My father? Why? She pressed her lips together like she already regretted saying anything. "I can't say more than that," she said. "Just ask him." Then her voice dropped. "Ask him why no one in this town will hire you." The interview ended right there. I drove home with both hands gripping the steering wheel. My thoughts were racing, but deep down, a cold certainty had already started forming. I didn't want to believe it, but I had to know. That night, I confronted my father, and what he told me changed everything. I found him in his study, seated behind the mahogany desk he had imported from England. A glass with an amber drink sat beside him on a leather coaster, untouched except for the ice slowly melting inside. "Dad," I said from the doorway, "I need to talk to you." He didn't look up from his papers. "Make it quick." "Why can't I get a job?" That made him look up. A small smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, and in that moment, I knew. "You called them," I whispered. "You called all of them." He leaned back in his chair, slowly turning the glass in his hand. "I told them the truth." "What truth?" "That you can't be trusted," he said calmly, as if he were talking about the weather. "That you took $200 from your own family, that you shouldn't be anywhere near company money." For a second, the room felt like it shifted beneath my feet. "That was for school," I said, "and I paid it back. Every cent. You know I paid it back." "Did you?" He shrugged. "That's not how I remember it." "Dad," my voice cracked. "Those were textbooks. You said I could use the card." "What I remember," he interrupted, "is my daughter taking money from me, and I think potential employers have a right to know who they're considering." My mother appeared in the doorway, twisting her hands together. Something flickered across her face. Guilt, maybe. Or maybe just the last trace of the woman she used to be before 30 years with Gerald Thornton taught her how to stay quiet. "Gerald," she said softly, "maybe we should—" "Diane, this is between me and Ingrid." She flinched. For one brief second, her eyes met mine. And I saw it. She knew this was wrong. She knew exactly what he was doing. But then she looked away, stepping back into silence the way she always did. Somehow, that hurt almost more than what my father had done. He was cruel. But she was standing right there, watching it happen. and still choosing not to see me. I stared at him, tears burning behind my eyes. "Why?" I asked. "Why would you do this to me?" He stood slowly, walked around the desk, and stopped in front of me, close enough that I could smell the sharp scent of his drink on his breath. "Because you needed to learn respect," he said quietly. "You turned down my offer. You thought you could make it without this family." He smiled. "Without me?" Then his voice dropped even lower. "Maybe now you understand. You can't." "Come home," Mom said from the doorway. "Work for your father. This can all go away." I looked from her pleading face to my father's satisfied one, and everything became clear. This was never about respect. It was about control. And in a small town, whispers move faster than the truth. Within weeks, I could feel the difference everywhere I went. At the grocery store, neighbors who had known me since childhood suddenly looked away when they saw me. At church, conversations stopped when I walked past. The woman at the dry cleaner, who used to ask about my classes, started speaking to me like I was a stranger. The whispers followed me everywhere. "Did you hear about Gerald's daughter? Such a shame. The family tried to help her. She just wouldn't listen." My father had been careful. He hadn't only called employers. He had planted the story throughout his entire circle: golf friends, Chamber of Commerce contacts, neighbors at dinner parties, people who owed him favors, people who wanted to stay on his good side. The story was always the same: troubled daughter, money issue, family trying their best. He didn't have to tell the whole truth. He only had to tell his version. And in a town where Thornton Construction had built half the commercial buildings, his version was the one everyone believed. Marcus made it worse. I ran into him one morning at the coffee shop where I used to work part-time. He was there with a group of friends, men I vaguely recognized from his business school days. "Hey, little sister," he called out, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Still looking for work?" His friends turned to look at me. "I heard Dad might have an opening," Marcus said, grinning. Then he laughed. "Although maybe he should keep you away from the register." His friends laughed with him. I left my coffee sitting on the counter and walked out with my face burning. That night, I opened my banking app and stared at the number on the screen. $3,000 in savings. Rent on my tiny studio apartment was due in 2 weeks. If nothing changed, I had maybe 2 months before I ran out of options completely. 2 months before, I would have no choice but to return to my father's house and accept whatever crumbs he decided to offer me. I couldn't let that happen. I wouldn't. The Willow Inn sat near the edge of town, a modest little hotel mostly used by traveling salespeople and families visiting the nearby state park. It wasn't glamorous, but it was hiring. The listing said they needed housekeeping staff, no experience necessary, no references required. I applied online at 2 a.m. when the shame felt a little less heavy. 2 days later, I was standing in the employee break room, filling out paperwork. The manager was a woman named Linda Crawford, mid-40s, no nonsense, tired eyes, the kind of woman who looked like she had seen plenty of people walk through her door with stories they didn't want to explain. She looked down at my application. Then she looked back at me. "Accounting degree," she said flatly. "GPA of 3.9. "And you want to clean hotel rooms?" Linda asked. "Yes, ma'am." "Why?" I could have lied. I could have said I wanted experience in hospitality, or that I liked working with people, or that I was just looking for something flexible, but I was exhausted from pretending, so I told her the truth. "Because no one else will hire me," I said, "and I need to eat." Linda studied me for a long moment. I wondered if she had heard the rumors. I wondered if she would call my father for a reference and let this door close like all the others. But she didn't. Instead, she gave one short nod. "I don't care what people say about you, Miss Thornton," she said. "I care whether you show up on time and do your job." Then she slid a uniform across the desk, pale blue polyester, stiff fabric, the kind that wrinkled almost instantly. "Your shift starts at 6 a.m, she said. "Don't be late." I took the uniform with hands that were not quite steady. "Thank you," I managed. "You won't regret this." Linda almost smiled. "We'll see. Minimum wage, early shifts, cleaning bathrooms, changing sheets, walking past people who used to respect me while they pretended not to recognize me. It was not the future I had worked for, but it was work. It was survival. And most importantly, it was something my father couldn't take away from me. 6 months into my job at the Willow Inn, my family decided to have dinner there, and I don't believe in coincidences anymore. It was a Friday evening. I was pushing my supply cart down the service hallway when I heard a familiar laugh. My father's laugh. Loud, confident, proud of itself. The kind of laugh that had always made my stomach tighten. I stopped moving. Slowly, I pressed myself against the wall and looked around the corner. There they were, being seated in the hotel restaurant. Dad in a charcoal designer suit, Mom wearing pearls, Marcus already looking bored, scrolling through his phone. The hostess led them to a window table directly in my line of sight. I should have stayed hidden. I should have turned around, switched floors, asked another housekeeper to cover the area. But before I could move, my father saw me. He saw the cart, the uniform, the rubber gloves on my hands, and then his face spread into the widest smile I had ever seen. "Well, well," he said, nudging my mother and pointing right at me. "Diane, look, our daughter found her calling." Mom's face changed for a second. Maybe it was embarrassment, maybe guilt, maybe something she would never be brave enough to say out loud. Marcus just laughed. "Hey, Ingrid," he called across the restaurant, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "Did you finish room 204 yet?" Several guests turned. Some of them recognized me, and I saw it happen again. The looks, the whispers, the quiet judgment from people who had no idea what the real story was. I stood there in that wrinkled blue uniform, holding a cleaning brush, while my family sat at a white tablecloth table with crystal glasses and expensive watches. My father lifted his wine glass toward me, like he was making a toast. "Maybe now," he said, just loud enough for his voice to carry, "you'll finally learn to respect us." I didn't break down. I didn't answer. I didn't give him the scene he wanted. I simply turned around and pushed my cart back down the hallway. But something inside me changed that night. Something hardened, and for the first time in a long time, I remembered what Grandma Margaret had told me. "When the time comes, you'll know." But when? 3 weeks after that dinner, I was cleaning out a box of old things from my closet, trying to find anything I could sell to help cover rent. That was when I found my old phone. The screen was cracked. The battery was completely dead. I had upgraded over a year earlier and forgotten all about it. For reasons I still can't explain, I plugged it in. A few minutes later, the phone buzzed back to life. Notifications flooded the screen. Old texts from college friends I had lost touch with, spam emails, missed alerts, and one voicemail from 3 years earlier. Right after Grandma Margaret passed away, my heart started beating faster before I even pressed play. "Miss Thornton, this is Walter Henderson from Henderson and Associates Law Firm." The voice was calm, professional, careful. "I'm calling regarding the estate of Margaret Hayes. There are documents connected to her will that require your attention. Please contact our office at your earliest convenience." The message ended. I stared at the phone. 3 years. I had missed this call 3 years ago. I remembered that time clearly. The heavy fog after Grandma's funeral, the days blurring together, the messages I didn't check, the calls I ignored because I could barely get out of bed. I had assumed everything with her estate had already been handled, because Dad told us it had. He said she had left most of it to charity, with small sentimental gifts for each grandchild. "Nothing significant," he had said dismissively. "Your grandmother was always sentimental." And I had believed him. I grabbed my current phone and called the law firm immediately. A receptionist answered after 2 rings. "Henderson and Associates. How may I direct your call?" "I'm trying to reach Walter Henderson," I said quickly. "He contacted me about my grandmother's estate, Margaret Hayes." There was a pause on the other end. "I'm sorry," the receptionist said. "Mr. Henderson retired last year due to health issues. His cases were transferred to different attorneys." My grip tightened around the phone. "Can you check the file?" Another pause. Then I heard the sound of typing. "I do see a note here," she said slowly. "Mr. Henderson attempted to reach you several times." My heart started pounding. "And?" "The file says the calls went unanswered. Then your father, Gerald Thornton, contacted the office and said you were not interested in pursuing the matter." The room seemed to go silent around me. My father said what? "I'm only reading the notes, ma'am," she said carefully. It says a family representative confirmed that the beneficiary declined further contact. I sat down on the edge of my bed. Dad had intercepted it. He had told them I wasn't interested. "Can you tell me where the case was transferred?" I asked. "I would need to check our records." "To which attorney?" "I would need to check our records," she repeated. "Can you leave your number?" I gave her my information, but something in me already knew I probably wouldn't hear back. The trail had gone cold, but now I knew one thing for certain. There had been something in Grandma Margaret's estate that Dad never told me about, something he did not want me to find. A month later, my father called. I almost didn't answer, but maybe it was desperation. Maybe it was the smallest remaining hope that something could still change. So I picked up. "Ingrid," he said warmly, too warmly. "How are you?" "Fine, Dad." "Listen," he said. "I've been thinking. This has gone on long enough. Your mother misses you." He paused. "I miss you." I stared at the water stain on my ceiling, the one I couldn't afford to repair. "Come home," he said. "Come home and do what?" "Work at the company. We need help with bookkeeping. I'll pay you this time. Not much at first, but something. You can live with us, save money, and get back on your feet." For a moment it almost sounded reasonable. Almost. "And the job search?" I asked. "The things you told everyone about me?" "Water under the bridge," he said smoothly. "Come home and I'll make a few calls, clear things up. And if I don't?" The warmth disappeared from his voice instantly. "Then you can keep cleaning hotel rooms until you finally understand how the world works." There it was, the real offer. Not help, not love, a leash. "I need to think about it," I said. "Don't think too long," he replied. "This offer won't last forever." Then he hung up. That night my mother called separately. Her voice was soft, pleading. "Please, Ingrid," she said, "just come home. Stop being stubborn. Your father only wants what's best for you." "Does he, Mom?" I asked. "Or does he just want control?" "That's unfair. He's your father. He loves you in his own way." "His way is ruining my life." Silence. Then she said quietly, "You're making this harder than it needs to be." I hung up without saying goodbye. An hour later, Marcus texted me. "Just give up already, sis. You're embarrassing yourself and us." I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my laptop and started applying to jobs outside our town, far outside. Places where the Thornton name meant nothing. I had to leave. 2 weeks later, I learned exactly what my father had planned for me. I was working a late shift at the Willow Inn, restocking supplies in the second-floor closet, when voices drifted up from the restaurant below. The ventilation ducts carried sound in strange ways. It was one of those odd building flaws I had learned to ignore, but then I heard my father's name, and then I heard mine. I stepped closer to the vent and held my breath. "I'm telling you, Richard, the timing is perfect," Dad said, his voice cheerful and confident. "Your son is ready to settle down. My daughter needs stability." My stomach tightened. "Merge the families," Dad continued. "Merge the businesses. Thornton Construction and Palmer Plumbing. Together we'd control the county market." A second voice answered, older, rougher. "She's the one who's been causing trouble, right? The money issue?" "That's handled," Dad said. "She's almost ready to come home. Another few months of this and she'll agree to anything." He laughed. "Including meeting your boy." My whole body went cold. "So what is this?" the other man asked. "Some kind of planned marriage?" "I prefer strategic alliance," my father said. "But yes, she'll do what she's told." There was a pause. Then Dad added calmly, like he was discussing a business contract, "By the time I'm finished, she won't have any other options." The other man chuckled. "Gerald, you really are something." "All right," the other man said. "Let's talk numbers." Their conversation moved on to business details. I didn't hear a word after that. I slid down the wall until I was sitting on the floor of the supply closet, surrounded by cleaning products and stacked paper rolls, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it was trying to escape my chest. He wasn't just trying to control my life. He was trying to turn my future into part of a business deal, a family arrangement, a merger sealed with his daughter's choices. I thought about Grandma Margaret, her warning, her promise, the way she had looked at me and said she had prepared for the day I would need help. I still didn't know what she had left me. I didn't know where to find it. but I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I could not stay in that town, not for one more year, not for one more month, not if it meant becoming exactly what my father had planned. So I started applying to companies in cities I had never even visited. Chicago, Denver, Atlanta, anywhere far enough that my father's name meant nothing, anywhere his version of me couldn't arrive before I did. The rejections kept coming. Some companies wanted references I couldn't safely provide. Others questioned the 2-year gap in my employment history, and how was I supposed to explain it? My father quietly damaged my reputation because I refused to become unpaid help in his company. I tried telling a careful version of the truth a few times. It never helped. "That sounds like a complicated family situation," one HR manager said politely, which was just a professional way of saying they didn't want to get involved. After weeks of sending applications into silence, I had almost given up hope. Then the email arrived. Subject line, "Interview invitation, Mercer Holdings." I had to read it 3 times before I believed it was real. "Dear Miss Thornton, we have reviewed your application and would like to invite you for an in-person interview at our headquarters. Please note that this interview will be conducted personally by our CEO, Mr. Daniel Mercer. This is an unusual request, but Mr. Mercer has expressed specific interest in meeting with you. Please confirm your availability." Mercer Holdings. I had applied there on a whim. They were one of the largest financial firms in 3 states, far beyond anything I thought I could realistically reach. I had never expected a response. And now their CEO wanted to meet me personally. None of it made sense. CEOs didn't interview entry-level accounting applicants. For a moment, I wondered if it was a mistake, or spam, or some strange setup I didn't understand. My finger hovered over the delete button. Then I heard Grandma's voice in my memory. "When the time comes, you'll know." I hit reply before I could talk myself out of it. "Dear Sir or Madam, I am available at your earliest convenience." 2 days later, I was on a bus to the city, wearing a second-hand navy suit I had found at Goodwill, with $47 in my pocket and no idea what was waiting for me. The night before the interview, I stayed in a budget motel near the bus station. The room smelled like strong cleaner and old carpet. The mattress dipped in the middle, and the ceiling had a water stain shaped like a cloud. But it was clean. It was quiet. And for one night, it was mine. Tomorrow might change everything. I hung my Goodwill suit in the bathroom and let the steam from the shower loosen the wrinkles. I polished my only pair of black heels, scuffed at the toes but still decent enough if no one looked too closely. Then I practiced interview answers until midnight. "Tell me about yourself. I graduated summa cum laude with a degree in accounting. I'm detail-oriented, hard-working, and eager to contribute to a team that values integrity. Why do you want to work at Mercer Holdings? Your company's reputation for ethical financial practices aligns with my personal values. I want to grow with an organization that does things the right way. Why is there a 2-year gap in your employment history?" That question, I practiced 10 different ways. None of the answers felt right. Linda, my manager at the hotel, had given me the day off without hesitation. "Go get your life back," she had said, pressing a folded $20 bill into my hand. "You don't belong here, Ingrid. You never did." I cried in the break room. She kindly pretended not to notice. That night, as I lay in the motel bed staring at the stained ceiling, I thought about Grandma Margaret, about her promise, about the lawyer's call I had missed. What had she left me, and why did the CEO of Mercer Holdings want to meet me in person? I fell asleep with questions circling through my mind like birds that couldn't find a place to land. The next morning, I put on my second-hand suit, took one long breath, and walked toward whatever was waiting for me. I didn't know it yet, but Grandma Margaret was about to keep her promise. Before I tell you what happened at Mercer Holdings, I want to ask you something. Have you ever been let down by the people who were supposed to protect you? If this story is bringing up memories for you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you want to know what was inside the envelope my grandmother left all those years ago, keep watching. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. The morning of my interview, my phone rang. I was walking toward the Mercer Holdings building, a gleaming tower of glass and steel that made me feel very small in my second-hand suit. Then I saw the caller ID, Dad. My thumb hovered over the ignore button, but something made me answer. "Ingrid." His voice was flat, cold. I hear you have an interview today. My stomach dropped. How do you know that? Marcus follows your little social media accounts, Dad said. Very careless of you, tagging the bus station and mentioning a trip to the city. My heart started racing. He did some digging, Dad continued, checked which companies were hiring, figured out where you might be going. I had posted one Instagram story. Just one. A cautious little message about new beginnings. I hadn't mentioned Mercer Holdings by name. I hadn't said anything specific. But I had tagged the bus station, and Marcus had filled in the blanks. It doesn't matter, I said. This has nothing to do with you. I know people in finance, Ingrid, Dad replied. The industry is smaller than you think. He let the silence stretch. One phone call, that's all it takes. You wouldn't. Try me, he said, or better yet, turn around, come home, and stop embarrassing yourself. Last chance. I was standing on the sidewalk, less than a minute from the building that might change my life, and my father was trying to close the door before I even reached it. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. You're done, sis. Dad already called them. Enjoy the ride home. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the phone. I looked up at the Mercer Holdings tower. 26 floors of glass reflecting the morning sun. Maybe Dad had already reached them. Maybe he had already planted the same story there, too. Maybe I was about to walk into one more polite rejection, one more door closing in my face. But I had come too far to turn around. I silenced my phone, straightened my second-hand blazer, and walked through the front doors. Whatever was waiting for me, I would face it standing. The lobby of Mercer Holdings looked like another world. Marble floors polished so brightly they reflected the ceiling lights. A 3-story atrium with modern art suspended above the center. Men and women in tailored suits moved toward the elevators with purpose, their shoes clicking sharply against the floor. I walked to the reception desk, suddenly aware of every scuff on my heels and every cheap seam in my blazer. Ingrid Thornton, I said, I have an interview. The receptionist was perfectly put together, wearing a silk blouse that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She typed something into her computer. Then she looked up. Yes, Miss Thornton. You're expected. She paused. Mr. Mercer will see you personally in his office, 26th floor. The CEO's office? That's correct. She handed me a visitor badge. Please take the private elevator on your left. His assistant will meet you. I walked toward the elevator in a daze. None of this made sense. CEOs didn't personally interview entry-level accounting applicants. Either there had been a mistake, or my father's call had worked, and this was some kind of public embarrassment I couldn't see coming yet. The elevator rose silently. 26 floors in what felt like a few seconds. When the doors opened, I stepped into a reception area that looked like it belonged in a magazine. Original artwork on the walls, furniture that looked handcrafted, floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the city that made my breath catch. A woman in a charcoal dress approached me. Miss Thornton, she said. Mr. Mercer is waiting. She led me down a hallway lined with photographs, the history of the company, I guessed. Then she stopped in front of a heavy oak door. Go right in, she said. Then her voice softened. He's been expecting you for a long time. Expecting me? I pushed open the door, and everything I thought I knew about my life began to shift. Daniel Mercer was standing by the window when I entered. He was older than I expected, early 50s, silver at the temples, the kind of calm, polished presence you see on business magazine covers. His suit was flawless, his office was larger than my entire apartment, but what struck me most was his expression. He wasn't looking at me like a job candidate. He was looking at me like someone who had been waiting years for this moment. Miss Thornton, he said warmly, please, sit down. I sat in the leather chair across from his desk, my heart pounding. Mr. Mercer, I'm not sure why. He gently raised one hand. Before we begin, I need to give you something. He walked to a safe built into the wall, an old polished brass Mosler, and entered a combination. This should explain everything. Then he pulled out a yellowed envelope. I couldn't move. The envelope was thick and sealed with wax that had aged to a deep amber color. On the front, in handwriting I would have recognized anywhere, were the words, "Only to be opened when Margaret Hayes has passed away and her granddaughter Ingrid Thornton comes for an interview at Mercer Holdings. The date underneath was from 15 years ago. I was 11 when she wrote it. "Your grandmother," Daniel said softly, placing the envelope into my trembling hands, "was the first person who ever believed in me." I stared at him. 20 years ago, I was nobody, he continued. Just a young man with a business plan and no funding. Every bank had turned me down. Margaret Hayes wrote me a check for $200,000. He paused. She made me promise her one thing. My fingers tightened around the envelope. She said, "Someday, a young woman named Ingrid Thornton will need a job. She may apply to your company. When she does, give her this envelope." I could barely breathe. "I set up a flag in our HR system 15 years ago," Daniel said. "Your name, your identifying information. The moment your application came through, I was notified." 15 years. He had been waiting 15 years for an application that might never come. Tears blurred my vision. "She told me," he said quietly, "that one day her granddaughter would need a safe place. She said when you came here, not if, when, I was to give you this." "Grandma," I whispered, staring down at the envelope. She had known. 15 years ago somehow she had known. My hands would not stop shaking as I broke the wax seal. Daniel stepped back, giving me space. The office was silent except for the soft rustle of old paper. Inside were 3 things. The first was a handwritten letter on cream-colored stationery, filled with Grandma's elegant script. The second was an official notarized certificate bearing the Mercer Holdings logo and a date from 20 years earlier. I scanned the text, then I read it again. And again. Certificate of Stock Ownership, Ingrid Marie Thornton, 8% founding stake, Mercer Holdings, LLC. "I don't understand," I whispered. Daniel pulled a chair closer and sat beside me. "When your grandmother invested in my company, she didn't want the shares in her name," he said. "She placed them in trust for you, her 6-year-old granddaughter. Legally and permanently, they belong to you." "But why didn't anyone tell me?" "The trust was designed to remain quiet until one of 2 things happened," he explained. "Either Margaret passed away or you came to this company seeking employment, whichever came first." He looked at the envelope in my hands. "She planned it that way because she wanted to make sure no one could take it from you." Then he paused. "Not even your father." The third item was a small leather journal. Its pages were yellowed and soft with age. I opened the journal. Inside were notes, dates, and observations that stretched across decades. October 1998. Gerald raised his voice at Diane over household spending. Diane cried for 2 hours. March 2002. Gerald refused to pay for Ingrid's piano lessons, said it was a waste of money for a girl. June 2008. Gerald forbade Ingrid from applying to out-of-state colleges, said women didn't need fancy degrees. Page after page, Grandma had been watching, documenting, preparing. "Your grandmother knew," Daniel said quietly, "exactly what kind of man your father was. She couldn't stop him directly, so she created a way for you to leave when the time came." That was when I started crying. Not quietly, not gracefully. I simply couldn't hold it back anymore. She had loved me that much. Daniel offered me a glass of water, then stepped outside to give me privacy. I sat alone in his office, holding my grandmother's letter as carefully as if it might fall apart in my hands. "My dearest Ingrid, if you are reading this, then I have already left this world, and somehow you found your way here. I am sorry I could not be there to give you this myself, but I need you to understand why I did what I did. I watched your mother marry Gerald Thornton. I saw the signs from the very beginning, the control, the harshness disguised as discipline, the way he made the people around him feel smaller so he could feel powerful. I begged Diane to leave. She refused. She believed she could change him. I could not save my daughter, but I promised myself I would protect you. From the moment you were born, I saw something in you. A spark Gerald could not put out. You questioned him. You dreamed beyond the walls he tried to build around you, and I knew with absolute certainty that one day he would try to punish you for wanting a life of your own. So I created an insurance policy. Daniel Mercer was a young man with a vision when I invested in his company. I placed those shares in your name because I knew Gerald would one day try to corner you, and I wanted you to have a door he could not close. By now, those shares should be worth more than enough for you to build your own life. Use them wisely, build something that belongs to you, and remember this, sweet girl. You do not owe anyone your obedience, not even family, especially not family that treats love like a leash. I am so proud of the woman you have become. Even if I am not there to see it, I know it is true. Live free, Ingrid. That is all I ever wanted for you. All my love, forever, Grandma. I pressed the letter against my chest and cried until there was nothing left to hold in. When Daniel returned, I had mostly pulled myself together. My eyes were red. My makeup was ruined. My hands still trembled slightly, but for the first time in years, something inside me felt lighter. There is something I need to tell you, Daniel said, sitting across from me again. I looked up. Your father called me this morning. Every bit of warmth left my body. What did he say? The same story he has apparently told everyone else, Daniel replied. That you took money from your family. That you could not be trusted. That I should reconsider meeting with you. His expression stayed calm, but there was something sharp behind his eyes. He was very confident, Daniel said. Very persuasive. And you? I listened. He folded his hands on the desk. Then I looked at the journal your grandmother left behind, 30 years of notes about his behavior. He held my gaze. And then I looked at the certificate proving you own 8% of this company. I stared at him. Ingrid, he said gently, your father just tried to damage the reputation of a founding shareholder of Mercer Holdings. A faint smile crossed his face. I do not think he realized the size of that mistake. He doesn't know, I whispered, about the shares, about any of this. No, Daniel said. Your grandmother was very clear about that. The trust was sealed. Your name does not appear in any public filings. The shares are held through a legal entity. There was no way for him to find out. So when he called you, he was trying to discredit someone who, on paper, is technically one of my bosses. Daniel leaned back in his chair. I have to admit, I have never experienced anything quite like it. I thought about my father, so sure he had taken away my final chance. I thought about Marcus and his smug little text. They had no idea what was coming. And for the first time in 2 years, I smiled. Then Daniel leaned forward. There is something I would like to propose. I wiped my eyes, still holding Grandma's letter. I'm listening. Next week, Mercer Holdings is hosting its annual charity gala. It is our biggest event of the year. Clients, investors, community leaders. He paused. Your father will be there. My stomach tightened. He's invited? He invited himself, actually, Daniel said dryly. He has been trying to network his way into contracts with us for months. Apparently, he believes Thornton Construction would make a strong partner for Mercer Holdings. And would it? I have been politely avoiding that conversation. Despite everything, I almost laughed. So, what are you proposing? I would like to introduce you at the gala as our new senior financial analyst, Daniel said, a position you are more than qualified for. I could barely breathe. And, he continued, as one of the founding shareholders of Mercer Holdings. He watched my reaction carefully. Your father will be in the room when he learns who you really are. For a long moment, I said nothing. Part of me wanted to say yes immediately. I could already picture Gerald's face when he realized the daughter he had tried to control owned a piece of the very company he had been trying to impress. But another part of me hesitated. I don't want revenge, I said slowly. I don't want to embarrass him just to watch him lose control. I searched for the right words. That's not who I want to become. Daniel nodded, as if he had already expected that answer. Your grandmother said you would say that. He gave me a gentle smile. This isn't about revenge, Ingrid. It's about truth. For 2 years you've been called unreliable, ungrateful, and unworthy. Your father has controlled the story because no one has challenged it. He stood and walked toward the window. The gala isn't about hurting him. It's about letting people finally see who you really are. Once the truth is standing in the room, his story falls apart on its own. I thought about that for a long moment. Then I said, yes. Can you imagine what was about to happen at that gala? My father had spent 2 years damaging my reputation, and he had no idea that my grandmother had prepared for this moment 15 years earlier. If you're watching this and thinking of someone who needs to hear this story, Someone trapped in a controlling family, someone who has been made to feel small. Share this video with them. And comment Team Ingrid if you're still with me. I want to know who's here. The Grand Meridian Hotel looked like something from a film. Crystal chandeliers hung from 30-foot ceilings. A live jazz quartet played near the far corner. Waiters in white gloves moved through the crowd with sparkling drinks and tiny appetizers. The guest list was filled with the most powerful people in the region. Executives, politicians, philanthropists, old money, new money, people who built companies, funded campaigns, and made decisions behind closed doors. I watched from a private room upstairs, waiting for my cue. The PR team at Mercer Holdings had helped me get ready. Nothing flashy, just a simple navy dress. Elegant, professional, understated, pearl earrings, my hair pinned into a sleek chignon. I looked calm, capable, like I belonged in that room. I did not look like someone who had been cleaning hotel rooms 3 days earlier. Through the window, I spotted my family. Gerald entered first, chest lifted, scanning the ballroom like he already owned it. His charcoal suit probably cost more than I used to make in 3 months at the hotel. Mom followed behind him in Chanel, wearing her perfect public smile. Marcus walked in last, already looking bored as he checked his phone. They didn't belong there, but they absolutely believed they did. I watched my father move through the room, shaking hands, laughing too loudly, positioning himself near the people he wanted to impress. He was trying to catch Daniel Mercer's attention, trying to push closer to the construction deal he had been chasing for months. He had no idea that in 20 minutes, everything would change. "Ready?" Daniel's assistant appeared beside me. I took a deep breath and touched Grandma's letter inside my clutch. "Ready." "Mr. Mercer will introduce you after his opening remarks," she said. "You'll enter through the side door." Then she paused and studied my face. "For what it's worth, everyone at this company knows what your father tried to do, and we're glad you're here." My throat tightened. "Thank you." She nodded and left. I stood there alone, watching the crowd below, counting down the minutes until I could finally stand in the truth. From where I was, I couldn't hear the conversation clearly, but I could see it unfold. Gerald had cornered Daniel near the bar. My father leaned in with that practiced charm of his, gesturing with one hand, smiling like he was closing a deal. Daniel stood calmly, hands clasped in front of him, occasionally nodding. Then another executive joined them. A woman I recognized from the Mercer Holdings website, Rachel, the chief operations officer. She asked Gerald something. He beamed. Then he started talking about his family. I could tell by the way his posture changed. First Marcus, his son, his heir, his pride. Then his expression shifted. Something darker crossed his face. Now he was talking about me. Even from upstairs, I saw Rachel's expression change. Polite interest turned into confusion. She glanced at Daniel. Daniel said something. Gerald laughed, that hollow, confident laugh of a man who believed he was still controlling the room. He was telling them the story, the one he had told everyone, the troubled daughter, the money issue, the disappointment. Rachel looked uncomfortable. A moment later, she excused herself and walked away. But Gerald kept talking, kept performing, kept building the version of me he had spent 2 years trying to make everyone believe. My mother stood nearby, nodding softly. The perfect, supportive wife. Marcus was at the bar flirting with someone's daughter, completely unaware of what was coming. This was my family. This was what they did. For a moment, the old shame rose in my chest, that familiar feeling of being reduced to someone else's version of me. But this time was different, because now I had something they didn't know about. I had the truth. "Miss Thornton." The assistant was back. "Mr. Mercer is beginning his remarks. You'll be introduced in 5 minutes." I smoothed my dress and touched Grandma's letter one more time. 5 minutes. 5 minutes until Gerald Thornton learned who his daughter really was. Daniel took the microphone as the crowd gathered. "Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the Mercer Holdings annual charity gala." Through the door, I could only hear pieces of his speech. Community, philanthropy, gratitude, partnerships built over 20 years. Then his voice changed. "Before we continue, I would like to introduce someone very special, someone who represents the values this company was built on: integrity, perseverance, and the courage to stand alone when necessary." The assistant gently touched my arm. "That's your cue." I stepped through the side door and into the ballroom. 200 faces turned toward me. I walked steadily toward the small stage where Daniel was waiting. My heels clicked against the marble floor. The navy dress caught the light from the chandeliers. I didn't look at my father, not yet, but I felt the exact moment he saw me. A sharp breath somewhere to my left, a low mutter, then the sound of a champagne glass hitting the floor. That was Marcus. I kept walking. "Ladies and gentlemen," Daniel continued, his voice warm and clear, "please welcome Mercer Holdings' newest senior financial analyst and someone very dear to this company's history, Miss Ingrid Thornton." Polite applause moved through the room. I reached the stage. Daniel shook my hand and leaned close enough to murmur, "You're doing great." I turned to face the audience, and finally, I allowed myself to look at my father. Gerald stood frozen near the bar. His face had gone pale. His mouth was slightly open. My mother had grabbed his arm, her fingers tight around his sleeve. Marcus stared down at the broken glass near his shoes as if he couldn't understand how it got there. I smiled, not cruelly, not triumphantly, just calmly. "Thank you," I said into the microphone. "It's an honor to be here." That was when my father started walking toward me. His face was tight with anger. "Ingrid." His voice cut through the murmuring crowd. He pushed past a waiter, nearly knocking a tray of drinks from his hands. "What do you think you're doing here?" The room went quiet. 200 people watched Gerald Thornton move toward the stage, his public mask slipping with every step. "Security," he demanded, looking around. "Someone call security. This woman should not be here." Daniel stepped forward. His voice stayed calm, but it carried through the entire ballroom. "Mr. Thornton, I suggest you lower your voice." "You don't understand," Gerald said, pointing at me. "She can't be trusted." "I told you this morning," Gerald said, his voice rising. "She took money from her own family. She isn't qualified to—" "Not qualified?" Daniel repeated, one eyebrow lifting. Gerald froze. "Mr. Thornton," Daniel said evenly, "I am fully aware of Miss Thornton's qualifications. You can't possibly— I am also aware that you have spent the past 2 years contacting employers in your county in an effort to damage your daughter's career." A ripple moved through the room. Daniel continued, "I am aware that the incident you keep referring to involved $1,200 in textbooks she repaid in full." My father's face changed. "And I am aware," Daniel added, his voice sharpening just slightly, "that you have been trying to pressure your daughter into a family arrangement that would benefit your business." The whispers spread instantly. Gerald's face went from red to pale. "How do you—" "Your daughter," Daniel continued, "is not just an employee of Mercer Holdings." He paused long enough for the entire ballroom to go still. "Ingrid Thornton owns 8% of this company. She has been a founding shareholder since she was 6 years old." The room went completely silent. Then Daniel turned slightly toward me. "Her grandmother, Margaret Hayes, invested in Mercer Holdings before anyone else believed in it. And she placed those shares in Ingrid's name to protect her from people exactly like you." The ballroom erupted into shocked whispers. I looked at my father. His mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. But for once, no words came out. Finally, he found his voice. "This is a setup," he said, looking around the room, searching for someone to agree with him. "This is not legitimate. My mother-in-law was confused. These documents can't be real." "The documents have been verified by 3 independent attorneys," Daniel said calmly. "They were notarized, sealed, and properly filed. There is no ambiguity, Mr. Thornton." "I'll take this to court," Gerald snapped. "I'll take this entire company to court." "For what?" Daniel asked softly. "For honoring a legal investment made 20 years ago?" My mother pushed through the crowd toward him. "Gerald," she whispered urgently, tugging at his sleeve. "Everyone is watching, please." He pulled his arm away, then he pointed at me. "You," he said, his finger trembling. "After everything I did for you, I raised you, I fed you, and this is how you repay me?" I said nothing. "I made sure doors closed because you needed to learn respect," he said, his voice breaking under the weight of his own anger. "You needed to understand that family comes first, that daughters do not defy their fathers." The room was silent now. Every eye was on Gerald Thornton. Every ear heard him clearly. "I made sure no one would hire you," he said, "and I would do it again, because that is what happens when you refuse to listen." Marcus stepped forward, his face pale. "Dad, stop," he said quietly. "We should go. This isn't the place." "No." Gerald shoved his hand away so sharply that Marcus stumbled back into a waiter. For the first time, I saw my brother's expression change. He had spent his entire life as the golden child, the heir, the one who always stood beside our father and benefited from his approval. But now he was watching Gerald unravel in front of every business contact he might ever need. For the first time, Marcus looked at Dad the way I always had. Gerald turned back to me. "She is nothing," he said. "She has always been nothing. Her grandmother was an interfering old woman, and those shares do not change who she is." He was breathing hard now, his polished image gone. No one was looking at me anymore. They were all looking at him, and finally they saw what I had seen my entire life. The ballroom was frozen. 200 people, executives, politicians, philanthropists, investors, stared at my father as he stood there, exposed by his own words. I stepped toward the microphone. "I did not come here tonight to embarrass anyone," I said. My voice was steady. "I did not come here for revenge." Gerald glared at me, but he had already said too much. There was nothing left for him to hide behind. "I came here because for 2 years I was called untrustworthy, unsuccessful, and a disgrace. I was pushed out of every opportunity in my own town. I was mocked for taking the only honest work I could find. I was told that if I wanted to survive, I had to give up my freedom to a man who saw my life as something he could manage." I looked at my father, not with rage, not with hatred, just clarity. The $1,200 my father talks about was money he told me I could use for school supplies. It paid for textbooks and basic academic needs, and I repaid every cent. I still have every receipt. I paused. But even if I had made a mistake, would that justify 2 years of interference? Would it justify trying to use my future as part of a business deal? A low murmur moved through the crowd. "My grandmother saw what I could not see yet," I continued. "She understood the truth before I had the courage to name it. She could not save my mother, but she found a way to protect me." My hand tightened around the microphone. "Not with luck, not with coincidence. With planning, with legal documents, with love that looked ahead." Then I turned back to Gerald. "Dad, I do not hate you." The room went still again. "But I am done. I am done chasing your approval. I am done accepting your version of my worth, and I am done letting you decide what my life is allowed to become." My voice did not waver. "This is my boundary. I wish you well, but you do not get to control me anymore." I stepped back from the microphone. For one breath, there was silence. Then the room erupted in applause. My family left the gala without another word, and I watched them go. Dad walked toward the exit first, his face tight and his steps sharp. Mom hurried after him, head lowered. Marcus followed behind them, staring at his phone like he could disappear into the screen. No one stopped them. No one tried to smooth things over with polite conversation. 200 people simply watched Gerald Thornton leave in silence. After they were gone, the room seemed to breathe again. The jazz quartet started playing softly. Conversations returned, quieter than before. Then something unexpected happened. A woman approached me. She was in her 50s, elegant, wearing a string of pearls that probably cost more than my old apartment. I recognized her immediately. She was the HR director from Patterson Financial, the woman who had quietly told me to talk to my father. "Miss Thornton," she said, her voice soft, "I owe you an apology, a real one." "It's all right," I said. "No," she replied. "It isn't." She pressed a business card into my hand. "When you're ready, if you're ever ready, I would like to discuss real opportunities with you, without your father's interference." Then she walked away before I could answer. After that, another person approached. Then another. Business cards, handshakes, quiet apologies. "I'm sorry, I believed the wrong story." "If I had known the truth." "Your grandmother would be so proud." Daniel appeared beside me with a glass of sparkling water in his hand. "How are you holding up?" he asked. "I don't know," I admitted. "I think I'm still processing all of this." He smiled gently. The shares, at the current valuation, are worth approximately $2.4 million. You'll want to meet with our legal team, of course, but they are yours, free and clear. $2.4 million. I couldn't even understand that number. And, Daniel added, your new office will be ready on Monday, assuming you're still interested in the analyst position. I laughed. It came out a little shaky. Yes, I said. I'm interested. 1 month later, my life looked completely different. I had a corner office on the 14th floor of Mercer Holdings. Not the biggest office. I was still new, still learning, still proving myself, but it had a window with a view of the city skyline. And my name was on the door. I had an apartment. Small, but mine. A 1-bedroom in a building with a doorman and a gym I almost never used. I kept fresh flowers on the kitchen table because, for the first time, I could afford them. I had colleagues who respected my work, a boss who valued my opinion, a career that belonged to me. News about Gerald spread quickly through the business community. Within weeks of the gala, 3 major contracts had been canceled. Partners no longer wanted to be connected to a man who had publicly admitted what he had done to his own daughter. His company was still standing, but it was smaller now, quieter, no longer untouchable. Mom called me once. "Can you forgive us?" she asked, her voice small. "Can we be a family again?" "I forgive you, Mom," I said. And I meant it. The anger had faded into something quieter. "But I'm not coming back. I can't live under those conditions again," she cried. I listened. When the call ended, I felt sad, but I did not feel guilty. Marcus sent an apology by text. It was short, generic, probably written after someone told him it would look better if he said something. I replied with 1 sentence. "Thank you." Nothing more. Maybe one day we would rebuild something. Maybe we wouldn't. Gerald never reached out. I didn't expect him to. One quiet Sunday afternoon, I drove to the cemetery where Grandma Margaret was buried. I brought her favorite flowers, yellow roses, then I sat beside her headstone. "You saved me," I said softly. "You saw it coming, and you saved me." The wind moved gently through the trees. "I'll make you proud, Grandma. I promise." I stayed there until the sun went down, and for the first time in years I felt completely free. Sometimes I still take out Grandma's letter and read it again. "Live free, Ingrid. That is all I ever wanted for you." She couldn't have known every detail of what would happen. She couldn't have predicted every choice my father would make, or the exact moment I would finally reach my breaking point. But she understood the shape of it. She knew what kind of trap he would try to build, and for years, quietly and carefully, she built a door he could never lock. That is love, not just words, not promises, action. If these past 2 years taught me anything, it is this. The people who truly love you do not protect you by controlling you. They protect you by giving you options, by building foundations you can stand on, by trusting you to find your own way. And I learned something else. Boundaries are not betrayal. For so long, I felt guilty for wanting independence, for not being the obedient daughter my father demanded. I thought something was wrong with me, but there wasn't. There never was. Setting boundaries with controlling family members is not cruelty. It is survival. It is self-respect. It is the first step toward a life that finally belongs to you. And sometimes, the help you need comes from places you never expected. A grandmother's quiet planning, a stranger's kindness, an opportunity you almost didn't take. So keep going, even when it feels dark, even when every door seems closed. Somewhere, there may still be a way forward waiting for you. I keep Grandma's letter in my wallet now. The paper is softer from being handled so many times. The crease is worn thin. Don't let anyone control you with money. Build something that belongs to you. I'm building it, Grandma. Every day I'm building it. And I'm finally free. That's my story. No magic, no perfect rescue, no sudden miracle, just a grandmother who loved me enough to plan ahead, and a granddaughter who kept going even when everything felt impossible. If you're watching this and you're stuck in a controlling family or you've been made to feel small by the people who should have protected you, I want you to know this. It can get better. You can get out. But sometimes you have to build your own door. Thank you for staying until the end. If this story meant something to you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe and hit the bell for more stories like this one, and check the description for the next video. I think you'll like it. Take care of yourself. You deserve to be free.